Hey folks, this is Tolly and welcome to more Game Dev. I don't have a specific goal today. Kind of leaving off from where, or jumping back in from where we left off last week. There hasn't really been a lot of changes since the last time I streamed. I guess let's jump into where we were. So the last weekend we worked on getting this combat scene converted over to the new 3D look, kind of building out this level, getting some geometry. In between streams, I've got the anchoring working finally for the characters, so that they're actually like anchoring atop the head correctly. I also sorted out there was some pixels being lost on the character when he was like in that crouch position. Still have to tune some of the movement systems in this cutscene, but for the most part, we've got it operational in the 3D space instead of the 2D space, which is a good step. We also, in the stream on Sunday last weekend, I think, took a look at the combat stuff. So same idea, we converted the combat system to be also 3D instead of 2D, and spent a long time just playing with camera systems, just manipulating and trying a bunch of different things to try and get the camera stuff like figured out, and we learned a lot about the camera system. Oh, interesting. The attack is off. The selector is is selecting in the right spots. The attack animation is off. Interesting. Okay, cool. We essentially played with having the camera zoom in on the character, try and keep multiple characters in focus, did a bunch of different stuff around that. And that was really interesting, but I've since come to the decision that I don't want to spend a ton of time on that problem. There's some really low-hanging fruit in terms of getting like a really solid camera system up and running, but I think it's more important that we probably just do the simplest version and just get the game functional. We can, once combat is fun and interesting, then we can figure out how to do more complicated camera movements once everything else is operational. Hello Trinity, welcome to the stream. Yeah, so that's kind of the general intro. In terms of what we're doing today, I don't have anything really specific. We can take a look at the task tracking system I've been using. We can bring this up real quick. So we converted the combat system to 3D, and we also got kind of a lot of this other stuff generally complete. We got the cutscenes set up as 3D. Those are kind of in test because, as we just saw, there are still some anchoring issues and some other problems. The next big things that I would like to take a look at is, well, I wouldn't mind investigating cutscenes during dungeon exploration, which is essentially having those dialogue boxes appear as you're walking around. I think there's some interesting things that can be done in that regard. There's also general like interactables and puzzles. I think not last weekend, but the weekend before, we did a bunch of systems around keeping track of the enemy states. We essentially need to do, and also keeping track of the item states. We still need to do that logic as well for interactables. So if you open a door, that door stays open even if you exit a section of the dungeon and come back in. The other kind of like month-long task that I still want to work on is a battle simulator. So like right now when we run in this game, we can kind of choose a series of different actions that we can perform. So we can say, hey, I want to have this character, if we zoom out a little bit, I can say, hey, I want to have this character attack, and the selection is a little bit off as well here. I can choose this character here, and then, ooh, the attack is working now. Why did the anchoring break? Excuse me. Okay. Oh, that one's off though. Okay. Yeah, and the energy being pulled from the meter is supposed to go to them. That's also broken. Okay. So my point though is that we can perform a series of attacks and skills. They like require energy. We take so much damage, and then we finish a battle. We get back into the dungeon, and then we'll keep going and progressing. I'd like to try and get into having some sort of simulator that maybe isn't even like part of the game itself, but kind of built kind of separately or to the side of it, that would allow me to like run 1,000 battles and tell me how many battles were the characters able to fight before they had to heal, how much damage were they taking on average per battle, you know, what were the changes, and like kind of allow me to then tweak characters' HP and attack values, run the simulation, see what effect that has. That won't work perfectly for getting something that feels really fun, but it at least can help get us into the ballpark a little bit closer, especially as we want to tune stuff for not just the start of the game, but we want to tune stuff for when you're level 10, level 20, level 50. Like in that progressive kind of arc, we want to make sure that we're kind of allowing for all of those stages of the game to all be well balanced and mostly fine. And so using a battle simulator to calculate a bunch of this stuff so that we don't have to play through the game multiple times will in the end save us a ton of effort. Although getting the battle simulator is probably too much for today. So there's also general code cleanup as well. As we were going over the last 2 weekends and kind of doing general work, there's like old 2D scripts that we don't need those scripts anymore, and we could delete those. There's like the way that we were setting up entities in the player state machine could be different. So there's a bunch of small things that we could be doing in terms of like kind of knick-knack problems that I kind of left to the wayside. But part of the reason I built this and I started tracking these is because I didn't want to do them on stream. So, okay. Let's review. Let's see where we're at. Okay, so starting with this, can we actually get all the way through this cutscene? I want to grab the cutscene asset, which is this guy, and we're going to lock this in this inspector view. Okay, and this all seems good. So let's run through the whole game. I think that's going to be kind of the best place to start today. Is I think I need to come up with more tasks for my task tracking, and I want to kind of just do a general review of where we're at. Yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. Okay. Dialogue's a little laggy when it first appears. Something's a little weird about that. Character movement speed. Let's fix that. Now, what is going on? Why are these characters moving so slow? Movement speed. Their base speed is 8. But is it this nav mesh agent that we're using? I don't think it is. It should be based off of this speed. Let's take a look at the cutscene. Movement step. So in here, we grab the desired direction they want to go in, and we pass that direction into the movement. Those then set the movement speed based off whatever our current base speed is, and then we try and move at that movement speed. Okay. So if the character's base movement speed is 8, I would actually expect them to be moving a lot faster than they currently are. Okay, let's run it again. Dialog box came in a little bit cleaner that time. Let's test things by changing the base speed up to like say 16, just double what it currently is, and then see if the character moves in a bit quicker. They do not, so it is not using the movement speed in a way that I would I would expect. Huh. Okay. Let's go into the cutscene movement state. We already have a breakpoint in there. Fantastic. And let's see what's actually happening. Other small piece. Camera parent. Starting camera is not where we are starting currently. That is because this has a higher priority. That was something I did for debugging purposes, but this should probably actually be 0, which we'll have to redo here in a second. Okay. The debugging stuff is attached. Oh, minimize the wrong window. Okay. And okay, we are continuing with the sequence. That's fine. Okay, entering into the movement state. Base movement is 8. We're taking that input vector. Yep, that looks right. We're doing some modifications on it. We're setting a movement direction. That's fine. And then this all looks correct. Can we take a look at this character object? If we crank the movement speed up to like 200, do they fly? They do not. Okay, can we put a breakpoint back in here again? And then unpause. We should see a movement speed of like 200. We do. Yeah, should be moving a pretty ridiculous amount now. But we are not seeing that. Okay. So then the physics must be a problem in some way then? So is this somehow colliding on something as it's moving? Doesn't look like it should be. We do have an error. This is something that's just a general problem that I need to fix, but not actually gonna affect these current tests. Huh. So this is a tricky one then. Everything I'm seeing would seem to imply that she should be moving at a faster pace if I increase the movement speed of the character. But that does not seem to be holding true. Sanity check. We're just going to modify the value of the base movement speed in here. I'm also going to do a quick check to see where movement speed gets updated on entering for different states. Yeah, we won't be hitting any of these states. We'll be in the cutscene state the whole time. Okay, so that's not being modified, which, to be fair, we can kind of see that too. Yeah, even starting with 200 isn't making a difference. It's not trying to move into the floor or anything. It's moving perfectly on the x-axis. Moving up the hallway. The nav mesh agent is on, and the nav mesh agent is overriding that movement. That's what's happening. Okay. So this system and this system are fighting each other. This is a problem I've solved already. If we go into the enemy system has something to deal with this. Because I had this problem on here. Patrol state? Update movement. Where's the nav mesh modified? Update position and rotation. False. On initialization. We need to do something similar for the player. Ah. We update the rotation to false, but we don't update the position to false. Okay. So this will tell the nav mesh agent to not be in control of the movement. It'll try and pick a direction and calculate the path, but then from that calculated path, we will move the character. We want to be in control of that. Okay. And now at 200 speed, this character is going to whiz into the... Yeah, they overshot by a lot. Okay. Let's come back into here. Let's change the base movement speed back to 8. Where it starts at. We probably want to be able to control that movement speed in some way, but for the time being, let's just see if we can get it working. Interesting. Huh. Okay. So it is not detecting when it reaches its destination. And that's because we need to now be in control of updating the nav mesh agent's position as well. This is something we had to do for the enemies. For the beasts. We must do this same thing. Might want to move this into the update movement, to be perfectly honest. But let's see if that works. Because the fact that I had to make this change in both the enemy and the player feels weird. The movement controller should be able to say, hey, I'm going to update the position. Maybe we can make it more generic, more reusable. Okay, so they have reached the destination, but they don't realize that they've reached the destination. Within 0.25. For the beast patrols, what distance check are we currently using? Patrol point reached is based off range to switch. That was 0.25. Is that still the case? We actually lowered it to 0.1. Okay, so why is Fala not reaching the destination then? Let's go into the player movement system here. Remaining distance 0.5. Remaining distance 0.5. Remaining distance 0.5. Some variation of 0.5. Okay. Let's zoom in. Let's take a look at the movement. Interesting. So it looks like it's an overshooting problem. Fascinating. Interesting. I believe it's because it's not in a proper rounded position. I could be wrong. It's been known to happen. No, it's not that, huh? So you're moving to one of these 2 points, but I guess the point that we move to, we don't store the actual object. We only take the position we're trying to get to in the end. Interesting. Yeah, it doesn't look like there's an issue with the position being in the wrong rounding. The easier solution here is just to increase the distance at which the character believes they have reached their destination. But I find it fascinating that the enemies can have a destination distance of 0.1, but it could just have to do with the movement speed. She's moving fast enough that it's probably overshooting too much. So let's come into here to the cutscene movement, and let's just try cranking this up to say, it looked like it was bouncing around 0.5, so let's do 0.6. We'll say that 0.6 is close enough. There has to be a better way to deal with this, but for now, I'll accept just a simple value change. Because if we increase the movement speed of the character, this is going to become a problem again. Okay. Interesting. All right. And where are you trying to get to? Let's take a look at the inspector. So we have Ward is crouched, Ward is idle, the dungeons, then we have follow movement to waypoint and then to second waypoint. Then Ward tries to move to Ward waypoint. Okay. Which is going to be this guy, which is actually in front of Ward. Let's pull that further away. Is it too close? Why would that be a problem? Is it that there's no navigation? No, there's definitely a nav mesh in there. The character should be able to get to that point. We're seeing no console errors. There's warnings and general messages, but there's no errors. Okay. In here. Remaining distance 1.22. Okay, desired velocity. That looks relatively correct. We're trying to move negative Z, so towards Fala. That look, I don't know. I'd have to double check, but that sounds right. Base speed 8. Okay. Interesting. So what's happening is that Ward, not this one, the second one, has simplified movement. And that's messing with the movement vector, it looks like. What state are we in currently? We're still trying to move somewhere. The distance is 1.2. Okay. So now if we come in here after we do all this, the input vector is now 0. Interesting. You're telling me the desired velocity is now 0? No, desired velocity is... Oh. That would be a problem, wouldn't it? We're still working in XY, which is when we were in 2D space, but now things are XZ. Why have we not run into that as a problem elsewhere? Where are all the places where we do this? Oh, the monster was fixed for this reason. But the player wasn't. Oh, because the player operates off the direction stick, which is XY. But for specifically cutscene movement, we're working off of the desired velocity, which is in 3D space. I see how I've made this mistake. It's fine. We shall continue. That's probably part of the reason why they're having trouble even reaching points, is they just couldn't go like on the Z direction at all. They just were completely ignoring that. So we could probably lower the like distance for them to think they've reached their point now back to 2.5 or 0.25, sorry, and it should work. Okay, let's see. Sometimes it's just the little things. Are you using the right parameter from the vector? Okay. This all looks to be working. Hello, IndieMan64, first time chatter. Thanks for stopping by and saying hello. Cameras are still broken. Okay, so we need to switch this camera over to look in a different spot. Let's hit A on that for now. We're going to run into a problem here where the character's not going to be able to get through the door because we don't have any kind of system to open the door right now. Okay. Cool. What's this about? This is a project that me and my fiance have been working on for two and a half years. Recently switched from 2D to 3D. Kind of still trying to emulate the 2D look with the camera settings and whatnot, but it is actually 3D. And there's a bunch of systems that I had in place over the past few years that are still in the process of being adapted as we move to 3D. So this scene used to work in 2D space, but we're running into these types of issues. We're very close though. If the door is the last piece of the puzzle here, not too bad. There's also an issue where it couldn't find the entity jail door. Okay, what was that trying to do? What was that trying to do? Let's take a look. So somewhere in our cutscene node system, we are trying to do something to the cutscene door. Here. Oh, is that how we're handling that? Okay. That's pretty straightforward. I think we can make that fix really quick. So if we grab the door, which is this one, and we duplicate another copy of it and rotate it, we had set this up last time when we made the 3D environment to handle this. We can probably clip into the wall a little bit because of the fact that in 3D, or when we go to kind of a low-res pixel, you won't notice it as much. And then we're just going to add a new entity, and it looks like in the old 2D system we just used... Oh, that resets up to the top every time we open and close. We're looking for an active deactivate, which is the purple nodes. So we're looking for jail door closed and jail door opened, and it looks like we're just toggling them on and off. Okay, that's open. That's closed, and we just want to start with the open one disabled, probably. Cool. A little bit more about me if you're a new person popping in. I've been on YouTube for like 10 years. Most of the views I've had over the years were kind of in the 2010 era, Minecraft stuff. Kind of done variety streaming over the past 10 years, but in the last 2 or 3, I've been more absent. Work becoming more intense. I work as a game developer. I've done that for 11, 12 years now. Working in software development and design. I've moved into a technical design role as of late, but this is a personal project that I'm just focusing on in my own time. And all the art is done by my fiance Drixie. Yeah, I guess that's the general pitch of who I am and what we're doing. I want to come back to some of this dialogue too. I think we can do more. I'd also like to try and do voice acting for this, just if I was to do some simple stuff. Okay, the door popped open. That is looking a little broken, but why? Zoom the scale in. Why does that look off? Oh, it's the shadow. That's probably fine. I wish it read better. We might need to change the geometry in order to get that to look less bad. Yeah, because if we zoom back out... Yeah, it's just very muddy. The shadow kind of tints the kind of slightly more silver door that we set up. Yeah, you can see the shadows running across it. Okay, I don't love that, but can the character actually get out of the jail cell now? Can Ward escape? When we're switching to that, that's because there's a camera facing in the wrong direction. We need to fix that as well. It's kind of going back to the view from 2D. Oh, interesting. So the space is not quite big enough for him to fit through easily. Okay, and then it's transitioning to our old 2D dungeon. Yeah, it's coming back to this one. So then we need to change it to go to the new scene. Okay, so that should be the very last step. Scene transition to sewer dungeon take 2. That's now the gray box dungeon. Select scene asset. Gray box A. And yeah, we should be going to the HUD. That makes sense. Okay. Guard camera is the one that's currently giving me difficulties. Okay, let's fix that. So starting camera should be priority 1. This should be priority 0. Actually, this can be 0 too. And then this one here, let's copy the component here and paste paste values. Okay, so now that should be facing, if we exit 2D mode, in the general kind of same direction as the other one. Alright, I think the easiest way to handle this is going to be to just go in-game and tweak the camera's position live, and then we'll copy it and paste it out, but at least that's closer. Can we... ProBuilder keeps adding that blue cube constantly. I wonder if there's a way to disable that. Maybe that's because we have the shape tool window open? Yeah, it added another one. If we close this window, and then... It is. Okay, so because we had that tab open, it was constantly creating that blue temp cube. Okay, cool. Solved. So we're sliding down. Ooh, one other small thing is Ward should be laying flat at the start of this cutscene, I'm pretty sure. If we go check the YouTube archives... go take a quick look here. Yeah, he used to lay on the ground. Okay, so then the question is, how do we replicate that? I mean, the easiest way is going to be to add a new step in here that just sets his animation on the beginning. Yeah, let's try that. I really need to reinvent this thing. It worked really well for very small cutscenes, but as we get more and more complicated with our cutscenes, this thing's just getting too laggy. I need to rebuild it. Figure out how to optimize it. But it is still functional. Where is base animation sequence step? That's the one I'm looking for. Okay, grab. Okay, it's highlighted. We're moving. Scroll wheel to the top. And let's drop that up here. We're going to update Ward. And then these are operating off of trigger names. It's so laggy. Okay, just Ward. Okay. Then is that based off of the animation? I'm gonna assume it's this one. Yeah, okay. But most of these are actually like Ward wide. If we come into here and take a look at the animator. Oh, it's gonna be these state names. Okay, so southwest down. That sounds correct. Slap that in here. Okay. And now he should start on the ground. Oh, he doesn't. Did that not save? Errors? No errors. Got some repeat entity warnings. Not too concerned about those right this second. Oh, the player's control has to be turned off. If the player's controls are enabled, then it'll reset him back to an idle because the joystick isn't being touched, basically. So we have to first turn off the controls, then we need to update his animation. That's why he wasn't down. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Okay. Minor problem. When he's in the down animation, he is overlapping the table. So we need to bring the spawn forward. Okay. Yeah, that still looks wrong. Okay. I think this first one is supposed to be behind anyways. It is, except he's moving. Okay, so... That is supposed to have lock animations on, so we broke that at some point. Let's go take a look at that. Let's go track that down. Inside of player cutscene movement state, we want to be checking if not locked animation, set direction. The issue is that update movement is going to be setting direction. Hack it? Yeah, let's hack it. DM Adam 2, thank you for the follow. I hope that means you're enjoying the stream. Okay, so we're gonna do lock direction equals false. And then we will update movement if we are not locking direction. And then inside of the system here, on enter, we're going to want to grab the movement controller dot lock direction, and we're going to want to set that to this owner lock anim. I'm assuming this is getting set by, yeah, by this function, which is coming from the state system. Okay, yeah, so we're gonna do this. We do want to set it back to whatever it was before we messed with it though, so we're gonna want to keep a track of that. Last lock direction value. And that's what we're going to want to set here on enter and exit of this cutscene move state. Cool. And in theory, if we haven't broken anything, that should allow him to slide backwards without changing his facing. I'm okay with that hack because I think in general for like movement where the character's facing is locked, like that, I might want a more elaborate system. Character Fala should be facing the jail cell at this point, so those 2 points are too close together. Like that. And then we also want to... That's fine, that's fine. I think we want to also crank down the distance here again. I think that the issue was unrelated. We cranked that up because of a different bug. And I also think we probably want to get rid of the magic number there and distance... so that if we do want to tune this on a per character basis, we can. Because that's a public value that will show up in Unity's editor. Okay. Okay. Dialogue. Character moves forward. That works way better. I think movement speed could be adjusted for some of this stuff. I'll probably want to have control over that in the node system, but for the time being, I think this works. Interesting. There was a long delay there. Not 100% sure what was happening with that. Yeah, something's causing a bit of lag. Oh, I know what that lag is. That's the camera state shifting. But we made the other camera state identical. Okay, I see what the problem is. Gonna have to fix that too. And now this should be loading into Dungeon A. We did load Dungeon A. Couple of problems. Why? Dungeon A has a camera. That camera didn't end up finding the player. Interesting. We unloaded the other scene. Also, the character is off of the spawn point that they're supposed to be on. Got it. Entering into this scene from the cutscene probably doesn't initialize the dungeon correctly. Fascinating. Okay. So let's take a look at sequence step. Let's just go action, and then where do we do the transition between scenes? Let's translate UI. That is a screen transition. We're looking for a scene transition. Transition scene. Translate between scenes. Starts a coroutine. Okay. Keeping track of the dungeon state. If is translating to combat is not true, then we initialize the dungeon. Why would this have not happened? Huh. It's false by default. It only gets set to true when we're transitioning to combat, which we have not done. Interesting. Okay. So we want to check out that. We also want to check out the camera position. So this one here. We're going to try just shifting it. Okay, so we're here. We don't need this breakpoint right now. Okay, shocked that it's the thief. Be quiet. Fantastic. Okay. So let's go picture in picture. Copy component. and then paste values. Okay. This is a weird bug in which the dialogue stays up. That dialogue should close. Okay, good. Perfect. Skipping through the dialogue. Okay, we're transitioning here. What is the state of combat? It is false. Okay, so there were mostly... Oh god, what happened? No! Why did it not... Darn. Alright, we're gonna have to play through that again. What I can do, though, is I can have it just transition immediately after a few moments. We can just move that step up so that we can debug this a little easier without having to watch the entire cutscene every time. So we're going to put some breakpoints in here, because I'm not sure why it skipped that way. God, there are better ways to do this, I have found. Okay, some of the... So we're in also some really old code, because I don't love the way some of this is looking. Let's come to here. Let's go into super laggy mode. Let's grab this transition scene and let's drag it up for now. We'll need to bring it back down after, and we'll do it after the first dialogue. Like that. Okay, so he'll say, my head, where am I? And then we should transition to the next scene. That should be good enough. Good enough for testing. Okay, transitioning. Okay, false. Okay, we're going to initialize the dungeon. We're going to just go into here and add another breakpoint. Okay, current scene is gray box A. Excellent. We're going to load the player, and we're going to wait until the player is finished loading. Interesting. We never load the player. Player spawn never resolves. That's a new one. What is the state of this? This is a const, or like a static or something, isn't it? Yeah, so that hasn't changed. Interesting. I have not seen addressables fail in a very long time. And what's even more odd is that technically if we get out of here and look in the scene, the character is there. We loaded them. The load has been completed. It just never registered it. Let's run it back. Actually, I'm going to double check. What kind of warning was that? That was a debug log. Does it say the player is spawned? It does not. Okay, so it didn't. It never got in there. Okay, this is going to be, if we're debugging the addressable system, that's like core Unity functionality. This might be not something I can do on stream, simply because it's going to require a little bit more deep dive, and it's not just my code I'm debugging. It's like trying to figure out why Unity has decided that it doesn't want to load this object, or more accurately, it doesn't want to find out that it's loaded the object. Instantiation, okay. We're tracking. This is an action, okay. Where does this get called? We initialize that complete all over the place. But where... I want to put a breakpoint inside of the addressable logic if I can find it. It is not showing me where that gets called. It's probably internal. Okay, fun. Let's go back to where we were on the call stack. So here we're getting the addressable instance. Can't go to that. Okay, so we can't debug any further then. And now we're just waiting, but we never resolve. That is a new one. And what's even more weird about this is that we don't have this problem in the core game. So if we actually go into the actual scenes and go into like Dungeon B, for example, save that. And then jump into here. Why are we not getting any audio coming through? Oh, we have it muted. And then we walk down to here. This transition's fine. So we can switch between scenes when we're switching between dungeon to dungeon. The cutscene shouldn't be special in any way, though. Okay. We got most of everything else working in the cutscene. The fact that we can't transition to the dungeon is a problem. But I was gonna say maybe that class got deconstructed or something, but the fact that I can still debug to the breakpoint where we're waiting for the count seems wrong. Oh, no, that wouldn't... This is our load async manager. This shouldn't be affecting anything. Yeah, it's not like we're hitting these breakpoints twice. We're only coming in one time. How stubborn do I want to be right now? I want to be stubborn. I want to be stubborn. Okay. Debug, attach. It doesn't have the references loaded for addressables. Okay. Like what we just stepped through and debug through is it loading the character. Like it clearly loaded. It's just not calling the onComplete. Yeah, we're not doing any extra... We could do it this way if we want it to be a little bit more robust. This will give us a little bit more data. Let's see if this works. This is a different way of loading addressables that's like basically checking to see if it's already been loaded, and if it has, then you don't wait a frame. So what are we doing here? We're loading async operation. Oh, it's not quite the same because this is loading an asset, but this is instantiating an object. Async operation. I want to do exactly this. Okay, it's going to complain about that. Let's stop debugging. Let's use async operations. And then we're going to break this out into a function. Quick refactor, extract method. Spawn player. Okay. And then spawn player. dot result is what we're looking for. Result dot result. Sure. Async operation game object handler. Now we can just do that instead. Cool. We got the types figured out. All right. Evening Poisoned Lava. Welcome to the stream. Okay, so we've got this here. We're currently in the midst of trying to figure out why the player isn't spawning if we transition from a cutscene to the dungeon. But if we transition from a dungeon scene to a dungeon scene, it works fine. And it doesn't make sense. So, having to dig deep. Let's add some breakpoints and let's attach the debugger. Okay. We've set it so that after the second dialogue we'll transition. We really don't need this breakpoint here, or this one, or this one. We really only care about this set of breakpoints. Okay. That sounds like it worked. It did. We ended up loading 2 characters because I forgot to remove the first set of spawning logic. So I don't think we need this anymore. So if I had to guess, something's wrong with the way that the addressable's working. But essentially when we do this instantiate, it's not calling this onComplete for some reason. But what we're doing instead is we're saying, hey, addressables instantiate this thing. And then we're checking that result and saying, is it done? Because if it's already been instantiated once, it should already be in memory and we can just use it. And if it is, then we're just going to take that result and spawn the player. If it's not coming back as done, then we're going to say, okay, well then take this result and when it's complete, I want to call this function, which essentially is going to spawn the player. And I guess I should be doing this everywhere instead of just doing the fire and forget, but actually checking to see if it's already finished, and if it is, just move on with our lives. Technically saves like a frame or two. Well, it seems a frame, a single frame if we do it this way. All right, let's try this again without the debugging so that we can see it in action. Yeah, debugging's turned off. Okay, Ward wakes up. Transition. Okay, so we transitioned, but the character is not in the right spot. Interesting. That makes some amount of sense, because normally when we transition from dungeon to dungeon, we say which spawn point we want to go to. And if we check our cutscene logic, nothing inside of here is saying which spawn point to spawn the player at when we do the scene transition. So something's slightly off with that. So let's go to the transition between zones. Normally this passes in a spawn entity ID. So when we do this from the step-based system, so we can go check the translate scene step. This isn't passing anything in. And so thus it has no default spawn entity. Okay, so this needs some parameter then, which is going to be spawn point. And that value needs to go here. And then I think we do need to hook up a bit of the constructor logic in here. I don't think we ever use this. Yeah, there's 0 references, but proper maintenance says that we should do this if we're modifying the parameters, in case I ever do want to call this from code directly instead of through our visual editor. Okay, so that looks good. So then what is the node that we want to spawn here? This spawn point is sewer A entrance, it looks like. So if we stop debugging, we can now put that point in here because it's all auto updated, all smart like. Let's drag this up. Okay. And we're starting in the right spot. All right, that is functional. All right. I would like to play through the whole thing in one full correct step. So we're going to drag the transition scene back to the very bottom. If it'll stop lagging. Let go. That has to be one of the things. Okay. We had talked about at the very, very beginning of the stream that I need to document things that I need to do. It's probably not necessary to get things fully functional, but like we should, I should set that up. So we need to, this isn't, it is a programming task. Refactor, background music. Where did my background music go? We've been playing this one for a while. Let's switch it up. What about this one? Yeah. Okay, refactor, sequence, GUI, UI, editor window. That's the term. Sequence editor window is currently too laggy to use. With like 15 plus nodes. Okay. And then we'll assign that to me and create. Okay, keep that in the backlog. That's something I really need to do. It's not like it's hard to justify doing it because like there's so many other game things that I need to do, but it'll just make my life so much easier if I can just like have my cutscenes work correctly. Okay. Let's do a full playthrough of the cutscene and then we'll continue reviewing. This whole thing is I would just love to get to a point where we've reviewed all of the content. And we can document things along the way that are feeling off or wrong. But I just want to do a kind of a general first pass because everything is almost fully complete in the new 3D layout. Took a couple months to kind of diverge over to this, but I think it's going to be good in the long run. Still got to figure out why that isn't closing. What are you talking about? Okay, we got to find that phrase. What's going on? Trying to save you, you fool. What are you talking about? So there's no controls I have here, so it's a problem with the base dialogue system. I'm gonna not fix that one right now, but we're gonna keep track of it. So we're gonna come into here and code cleanup. We're gonna add a task. This isn't really code cleanup though. This is actually just a bug. So we've got a bug. Cutscenes. Do we not have a tag for cutscenes? We'll do dungeon. And then we'll do... what do we call this? It's like dialogue, not closing... It's not closing correctly. In jailbreak, cutscene, dialogue window remains up while character moves online. What are you talking about? Okay. Create a bug. Excellent. All right, moving on. This is what I need to do. Sometimes I feel just like a little bit lost unless I have like proper setup. Okay, camera movement is a little blurry. That's kind of more of a general problem. I need to rewrite some shaders, I think, is honestly the way I need to solve that. Or I need to get into Cinemachine and rewrite the way that it does camera movements inside of the actual package, but that's a bit of a bigger ask. Again, not necessary at this time. And I already have that called out somewhere. We don't need to track that. Okay. It is super distracting, but I'm not going to be stubborn with that right now. Okay. He really struggles to get out of that jail cell. Oh, right. We're transitioning. Okay. And we transition to the next scene after that. So that's fine. The cutscene's completable. We're able to get through everything. If we go to navigation, can we change the baking parameters a little bit to have it so he goes more through the center instead of walking along the edge? If we change his radius to 0.2 and bake that, that breaks completely. Okay. Oh, I need to remove the door when we bake. So we're going to turn the door off while we're baking the navigation. 2.5. We actually want to go bigger because we want to have it only be the very middle that he walks through. So we want to try and narrow the passage as much as possible. Okay, that's a little freaky, but it did work. Maybe we try 3.5. Is that not clear? 4.5? Alright. We can try that. Oh, I have to turn the door back on. Okay. Last playthrough of the cutscene, and then I'm going to move on to reviewing some of the dungeon stuff. There isn't actually a ton to review in the dungeon. We've kind of just spent a bit of time in there recently, getting all of the enemies and items working. So for the most part, that's already been resolved. I think combat is the next thing that we really need to take a hard look at, because at the start of the stream, I was kind of showing what we had done last weekend when we were kind of showing some of the combat 3D refactor, and I think there was some problems in there that we need to take a look at. Okay. I want to replace the guard dialogue with like another character in the cell next to it. I think like having it so that there's like a small pan over and having a character go like roll over or something, I think would work better, but that would also help with some of the pixel movements. Okay. Can you fit through the door? It could also just be that we need to remove... Yeah, that didn't work at all. Now he can't get through whatsoever. What if we just came into here and just like... what would be better? Removing all the collision off of that doesn't help. Oh, he got too close. What waypoint is he using to get out? Ward exit 1. Really? And then Fala exit waypoint, which is that one. Okay, I think part of the problem is that we didn't move the correct waypoint at the very beginning. He's trying to go to this one. If we had him move here first, it'll probably work a little bit better. Because he should just have to go straight. We want to line these up, I think, a little bit better. So that he can just walk on a mostly strength path. Let's change the snapping to 0.5. Okay. He'll have to move around a little bit, but I think that's okay. And then I do think I want to turn the collision off here on the door itself. Oh, it's not this door, though. It's the invisible open one. Okay, we'll turn off the collision. Let's try that. Let's try that. Okay, final playthrough. If it doesn't work this time, I'm going to just move on. I can tweak collision and nav mesh generation to my heart's content off stream. All right, and in the meantime, while we're watching this, or clicking through it to try and get to the movement part that we're trying to test, yeah, cutscene is the next thing. Or sorry, combat. Combat is definitely the next thing. Unless we want to do the puzzle interactable stuff. But I think I want to keep on the review train. Just try and refine what we already have before we continue adding things. Okay. Much better. Much better. Sweet. Okay. There was a little bit of movement still, and I think there's ways that we can clean that up. Maybe get rid of the collision on the top bar, because it looks like he's bumping his head, but that's fine. Okay. We got overlapping music. This section actually has music set up. Probably should set up music for the cutscene too, to be honest, but that's going to be a slightly more involved process. So we have enemies that we can avoid. We have a light sprint mechanic that allows us to move, you know, a bit quicker for a few moments, and then it has a cooldown before you can use it again, allowing us to get past some of these enemies. If we open the menu's busted. Okay. Okay. Fair. Is that gonna be... This wasn't busted before. Is it this thing? It is this thing. I had toggled this off earlier today because we were having difficulties with it, but... Okay. Yeah. So you can see here that these pixels are a little bit stretched. Something's off with this. I think it's because we're using stacking cameras. you can see that all of our different UI cameras are essentially overlays on the one main camera, and it doesn't look like Pixel Perfect Camera Experimental likes that. And it's causing issues. Of course, if we just don't have that at all, it's completely busted. Okay, so the UI has broken since we've switched to 3D, and more specifically since we've switched to Unity's new universal render pipeline. All right. That's a fun one. I was going to check something else, though. We have 5 potions. If we walk up here and we interact with this, we found a potion. We need to set up UI for that eventually. But if we come into here, we now have 6 potions. Okay, so the items are working. And if we get caught by an enemy, we do not transition into combat. Interesting. Is this going to be the same problem we just solved? If we go... Because this was working last weekend? Well, I guess the last time maybe it was the weekend before, because the last time we tested, I like Greybox B a little bit more. It's more complete. Last time we tested this was actually... before we did the 3D refactor. It does work. Interesting. So only if we load from the cutscene is it broken. Okay, I'm going to deal with that later. It's probably the same problem, and it'll probably be the same fix. Our selector is super busted. That is because our selector is a sprite renderer. And this thing was not designed for 3D. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, it just completely isn't made for this space. Okay. We will have to come up with a new selector then. If we did 90 and then 45. That's closer. Oh, 45. That's closer to what we originally wanted, but it's still not rendering out exactly correct. What is the sizing on this? Sizing is the same as the characters, I'm pretty sure. Where are our humans? Yeah, pixels per unit 64. Okay. Interesting. There's also the overlapping problem as well. Might need to come up with a new selector for 3D. Looks like there's another one being used to select enemies as well. I can kind of make it out as I move the cursor back and forth. Oh, or is it just colored weirdly? This thing. It's got a weird scale on it. That's the problem. Okay. Okay. Interesting that that has an odd scale. If we go into the actual combat scene, this is where we're at, I think now. We're switching gears. We're gonna just start taking a look at the combat stuff and see if we can clean up all of these small little issues. Pointer isn't in here, so is it a front? I guess it's on the front end, so it would make sense that it's a front end object. Pointer, this thing. Interesting. Okay, then there's the pointer updater. Okay, it has two different images that it uses. It has the banner one. And then something else can change that image. The selector data can. Set to native size. Interesting. Image dot... Where do we set the parent? Here. I think at the same time we also need to do transform.local scale is equal to vector 3.1. Just normalize its scale after we set its parent. I think that's the issue that we're seeing on the combat. As for the selector that we were playing with on the character, that I'm less sure on. Okay, so that's got this selector working. We just don't have the one around the character, which is a sprite in 3D space. Huh. Okay. Well, we want to have some sort of indication. So we're going to want to fix that in some way. Let's take a look at where that selector is coming from. See if we can track it down. Unlockable characters with the Hydrate redemption on Twitch. Alright. Good call, good call. I have this whole bottle of water, which I have not used in an hour and 40 minutes. Man, we've been streaming a while. Alright, hydration complete. So this is a selection indicator clone. Does each character have one? Each character does not have one. So someone generates this thing. It is a prefab, though. Because it has the word clone after it. That's what I Googled. Or Googled. That's what I searched. I don't know why that didn't come up. I must have misspelled selection. Okay, so this selection indicator exists here. Is there a pool? There is a pool of them. Oh, overlapping music again. I'm gonna have to be more careful on that. All right, so I select selector instead of selection. I see. Okay, cool. That makes sense. So this game object pool has the selection indicator, and then we have to track down who's using that. So if we do a quick string search, hey, look at that. Start unit's turn, we allocate a selection indicator. Okay. We set its transform to be 0.05 off the floor, which makes sense. Otherwise, we just parent it under the object and we basically set its position to be right there. Like, ideally, I would love this to look like it did in the 2D version. But the fact that it's... Okay, let's try this one more time. 90, 4, 2, 2, 4. Yeah, it just completely breaks down. I wonder if there's like an exact size we could get it at to make it look right. Probably. Well, I mean, are these characters scaled? They are not. They are here, though. What if we place it under this object and then normalize here? That's closer. It's a lot closer. We do have issues with draw order. What if we add a new layer? Sorting group is going to lock them into all being in the same render space, regardless. There should be a way to cause this to render behind. That's not working. Huh. That's not helpful. Also not helpful. We're so close. It just looks a little bit off. Interesting. Oh, it's because its position is off. That's getting rounded, so as long as this is in the same spot, this should be rendering out okay. It does look like it's doubling up some pixels, and there are some pixels missing on top. That could be because it's clipping into the character. But of course, if we rotate it even a little bit, it'll break. Huh. That's actually almost perfect. It's just slightly too big now. Huh. And clearly clipping into the floor. I also wish that I could get it to render behind her. I'm not entirely sure why. Oh, unless it's legitimately just that this needs to be the other way around. Is it the opposite of what I thought? No, that doesn't seem to be making a difference. If we go to the same layer, go here. Doesn't make a difference. Putting above does not make a difference. Dragging it out. Not making a difference. Keep wanting to switch this tab, but it's not what I need to do. Nope. Is this character on a different layer or tag causing it to render differently? No. Is this one? Also no. Sprite default. This is using a different shader. Oh, could that be having an impact? Causes it to disappear. Disappearing is interesting. Okay. Nice. Shader problems. Okay. Solved. Next problem. How do I get it to not render through the floor? Easy solution to that is to have two different cameras. That's going to get to be a pain, though. Can we just raise it up? Technically, yes. Okay. General opinion is I hate this. I think trying to do a selector in 3D space like this is going to cause a bunch of issues. as we're currently seeing. So if we can't adapt the 2D system, how do we do it instead? So we currently have a UI selector, and that's working okay. But if I remember correctly, it's been a while since we've done some of this combat stuff, is that I think I wanted to eventually go more towards this for the selector instead of this box selector. This was meant to be just placeholder, and this was supposed to be the replacement. So I would love if I could get it working, but it looks like it's going to fight me every step of the way. Even the fact that, like, it would be one thing if it was just, like, trying to figure out how to get the it to, like, not render through the floor. But, like, technically it's getting, like, its pixels squashed in really weird ways still as well. Oh. That help? Not really. Okay, okay. Wild thought. What if we just made it a 3D object? Well, not like that. Let's build it in the prefab. Selection indicator. Bring that in. And then let's make a cube. Let's parent that cube under the selection indicator. Set it to 0, 0, 0. Let's change our snap value to 0.1. Face edit. Make something that's really thin. Why is that coming out to be a rectangle? I would anticipate that this is square. That's obviously not going to make a difference. Weird. Okay, so we've got a cube. Let's move that cube out 1, 2, 3 meters. And then do the same thing with a cube on the opposite side. 1, 2, 3. I'm not 100% sure this is the right way to build this, but this is the way I'm going to build it. Okay, and then let's grab this face and extrude. Grab this face and bring it over to here. Interesting. Do I need to do like 0.5? Okay. And then grab this object. Actually, we can just do this by extruding. We can grab the other side. Extrude out. Control E and then Control to snap. And then go back to movement. We didn't rotate far enough. One more snap. Okay. Then we do the same thing on this side. Extrude. Okay. Always one more than I think. Extrude. I have no idea if this is going to work. That's another option. That's a good call. Unlockable character saying that we could do an indicator above the character as well. That's definitely a direction we could go with it. If I just want to try and see if I can get what I had working, but that's probably honestly a better shout. Okay. And then what if we just grab all those faces? Well, let's try this at first. Okay. So now we have this object. Let's make this series of cubes yellow. Let's turn off the base sprite renderer. And these things are all at 0, 0 basically. And then let's overrides apply all. And then we can delete this. And then that prefab will be updated so we can see it in game differently. I think the reason that I didn't want to go with above head selectors is I was concerned about overlap. Okay, too small. Some weird dimensions. Yeah, I hate that. That looks awful. It's like way too bulky. Come on. Interesting. Just gonna try shrinking it a little bit. Yep, nope, still awful. Okay. Well, how do we want to do this then? I don't think it's the floor piece. Well, we could do unlockable character selection of like a arrow above the character's head to indicate who's going. That's probably not too difficult. Processing. Sure, just in case. How do we get the selected character? This was a system, I had made this kind of debug purple square for testing alignment to get that functionality up and running in between last streams so that the dialog boxes would anchor to the correct spots. So we're going to need to use that same functionality, but the question is, how do we get the selection? Like here, this is on the start of the character's turn. We're grabbing the selection object, but we're essentially allocating one from the game object pool. And then we're aligning it to the front character unit. But with the navigation system, this is getting the selector data from the button. They're two disparate systems. There's not really much of a way I could connect them. So we need to get the current unit, which is gonna be this front unit. But this is getting us the actual unit. From that unit, we need to figure out how we can get their UI information. I'm going to mute audio and we're going to go back to combat real quick. I don't want to jump in and out of the audio for combat. I want to stay in the serene audio for a second here. When we have a unit, Unlockable character asks, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the floor clipping issue because the arena is on an angle? Does it look bad if you flatten the arena and make the back wall taller? So the floor isn't actually on an angle. It just looks that way. It's actually perfectly flat. It's the characters themselves that are on an angle. And these are basically like flat images, and the selector is clipping through the floor because it just goes down below the floor. There are ways that I can have it so that like I can stack cameras such that the camera that looks at sprites always renders the sprite on top. There are like ways I could fix the selector issue, but I kind of want to just go with something simpler, and I think I can make an arrow above the character's head in a matter of moments here if I can just figure out how to get the UI position of that character. Which maybe we don't even need the UI position. Like when we anchor the dialogue, we anchor it to... Yes, okay. When we anchor the dialogue, we anchor it to the character, and we get the position we need to anchor it from the state machine. Oh, right, we're not loading the state machine anymore. But we need to get this position. Yeah. Actually, it's the sprite renderer we need. Yeah, it's the sprite renderer. Okay, so what I can do... Get front unit, transform, get selection indicator. Okay, let's... Got it. I got the steps. Okay, so we're going to go in here. We're going to go into the HUD. We're going to go in the HUD pools. There's a dialog pool. We're going to duplicate this, and we're going to name this selector type 2. Prototype. Turn selector pool. Okay, and then this thing will be the turn selector, different name, selection indicator. This exists here. Okay, we want to get dialog gray. I'm going to duplicate this. Combat. Combat's in here. We'll drag it up to this section. This makes sense. And we'll call this turn selector. Maybe I should keep the existing name in turn selection. Consistency. Okay, and then this will use this turn selection prefab. This turn selection is currently a dialog box. We're going to want to get rid of all of this functionality. It's not going to need an entity. It's not going to need any vertical layout groups. It's not going to need any content filler. The actual indicator we can use... We can get rid of all the dialogue and the arrow too. We can use one of these dialogue arrows as an indicator for the time being. This one will work. Okay, so we'll just use the indicator. It doesn't need a dialogue box. Okay, and then where is this in the scene? Yeah, it's just an object. Okay. Good. So that's the selection. Then we can come back into the code now that we've set up that game object pool, and we can do turn selection. Grab one of those. This selection object, we're not going to set the parent. Instead, we're going to do dialog box. How do we handle setting its position? Anchored position is equal to all this nonsense. So we're going to do selection object dot rect transform. We need to get the rect transform of the object. We need these guys. Anchor point is going to be this is a sprite renderer. So this is going to be anchor point is equal to get front unit get renderer, sprite renderer. We probably don't need to provide an override height. Oh, we might actually. This is a weird hacky thing, the override height. Yeah, it's 36. For getting it working, we'll just try this. Store data alignment. So the alignment value is just alignment, sprite alignment, and we want to align this to top center, so the top of their head, and we don't need the extra dialog offset for this, or the arrow offset. Okay, so the only thing we now need to figure out, and we can kind of get rid of all of this, the only thing we need to figure out now is what is the anchor position. So this was calculated how in here? Rect transform. Okay, so I think I can just do dot get component rect transform. And I think we're good. That should just make a dialogue arrow appear above the character's head whose turn it is. Probably don't need an object count of 3 for this pool, but that's fine. Oh, we need to switch back to combat. Save the scene. Select the scene asset to go find where all our scenes are located. Go to combat. I need to create like a drop-down window or something that just lets me select which scene I'm in. Interesting. This makes sense. This makes sense. So we're not deallocating it. So selection object is allocated. We also need to deallocate on end of turn. Okay. So instead of doing that this way, we instead need to do this pool deallocate. Cool. It's a little big. But that should work. Okay. How do we shrink that down? God, I love my system. That's so quick. Like, I know that may feel like a long time for me to do all of that, but like, in reality, that's pretty fast to get this whole new feature up and running. Interesting. Okay. Okay, so a couple of things. Small things. First off, we want to change this size to be 9 and 9 because that's basically the native size, even though it's not saying it. So that should be the correct size of this object. We also might want to change the pivot point. It looks like the pivot point is up top right now. That's pivoting to the bottom. We want to do 0. So it pivots here. I think that's what we want to do to have it so it lines up a little better on the top of the head. Yep. Okay. If we did something just out of curiosity, this is probably a bad idea, but if we did negative 0.25, I think that'll give us a little bit more space. That might be a really bad idea, but let's see what we get if we make that change. Hello, Kazikish. Welcome to the stream. Doesn't look good for these characters. It's okay for Fala. If we hit Y to rotate or switch characters, interesting. It doesn't handle the swapping correctly. As we switch between characters, the indicator disappears. These are the only 2 spots where we were calling that indicator. Okay. Yeah, because it only happens on start and end of turn. So when we swap units, we probably also want to update the selection object. So do all of this again. So let's do that. Let's make this a function align selection turn selection. And let's do that whenever we swap units. Oh, yeah, this is what this code here was doing. Any other spots where that was being called? No, that was the only other spot. Okay, cool. And hopefully that's functional. And then we should have an indicator again. Not ideal, but it's at least functional. Next thing I really want to do is I want to have the Mimic Giju stop alternating all of these like frames of dead animation that we don't have yet. So that's because we need to have the characters set to their idle when they enter into the game. So character load. Nope, not this one. Combat unit factory. In here, we set up all of this stuff for monsters and for characters. We need to update the animation. But at this stage, we don't really have access to it. that's fine. I'm going to slam this functionality into the unit for the time being, but I don't think this is where it should live permanently. I think there should be a separate animator component. Let's just do it properly. Okay, where does unit live? This is under like all of the combat stuff, which we haven't touched in forever. Okay, so this is a unit. Let's create a new... These are just mono behaviors, right? Yeah, there's nothing special about them at this time. Let's make a new one called animation. Sure. And then animation needs to have an init call. If we look at some of these other ones, they all have... None of them have an init? Okay, cool. Good talk. I thought some of these had like an init. I guess, yeah, okay, some do. Hello, Amorphous. Welcome. It's been going okay. There isn't really a set thing that we've been trying to accomplish. Yeah, it's mostly just been kind of polishing and reviewing a lot of stuff. We spent a good chunk of the first part of the stream just looking at the cutscene and like refining and fixing a lot of small incremental issues with the cutscenes. And then we're now into the combat basically and refining and doing the same thing. Ever since we switched to 3D and like we only did the conversion for combat and cutscene to 3D last weekend, there's just all of these small little issues as we slowly get everything fixed up. So we want to grab the animator, which is an animator type. And on a init, we want to do a get component in children animator. There should only be one at this time. This is probably not super safe. Could use entities, but this should work. We don't need an update in here. And now we just need to go into the combat here, and we need to add the animation component. Okay. And then animation might be just an awful name also, because I think that's like a name of a class in Unity. We might run into problems with that in the long run. Can I get this component? Will this return the animation? It will. Animation. I guess we don't need to keep a reference to it. We just need to init it, which we can do by just doing this. Okay, so which is going to grab the animator that we need. And then I'm fine doing in the init. We can do play. We do this elsewhere. Northwest Idle is the name we're looking for. Okay, and for the time being, by default, they'll set to Northwest Idle. So now when we load in, they won't be running in place, but they should just be static still. Because we don't really have an idle animation set right now, it's only a single frame. Worked for Ward, didn't work for the other two. Weird. Weird. Like, super duper weird. Why would that be the case? Let's double check when we run to see like what their component structure looks like. Characters, units, Fala. They have an animation. Sprite renderer. This is the correct object. If we look at Fala, looking for Northwest Idle, there is a Northwest Idle. It has no default transitions. So why did you not stay? Worked for Ward. Like, that's the weird thing. If it had only just been like one, or if it had been all of them broken, it would have been one thing. But the fact that like none of them are working is like super duper weird. Or only some of them. Whatever. Point is that it's odd. Huh. That's fair. That's fair. Just trying to figure out why this is not playing. Let's see. We should at least be getting 3 calls of this. Oh, whoa. That's not what I meant to do. Can't tell which object that we found this on. Oh, wait. Can we see the name of the object we found? This is Ward. Okay. This is also Ward. This is also Ward. Okay. I think I know what the problem is. Where do we initialize our characters now? There's somewhere where we decide like which character to load. We initialize the character model. We give it a prefab to load, which is going to be generic, and they'll all use that same prefab. But inside of this character design data, we have a character prefab. Where does this get used? Set character. Set character loads the animation controller on get animator. Okay. This is where we need to do the init. Right, we were already doing get animator here. Yeah, not a permanent solution. Okay, so what we'll do instead is we will add the animation before we do any of that setup. So we know that that animation component will exist. Then we're going to come into here, and then we're going to do get component animation dot init, and we will do the initialization here. And really what we could do is we could pass this in like this, and then have this take a runtime controller. And then this guy can be in charge of updating the actual information as part of its init. Runtime animation controller is equal to the one that we have found. That feels better. Okay, so now instead of updating Ward, who's already there, and we're going to overwrite in a second, we're instead going to wait for all the characters to load, then we're going to tell them all to go into their idle. Load. Problems. I refuse to hear it. What did I do wrong? Oh, I didn't save. Fair. Tough but fair. We've actually got a few people hanging out this evening. Thanks for the lurkers. Appreciate people joining for what is essentially just some debugging of small problems. We need to do the same step now here in order for this to work on this side as well. Monsters need to have different default animations. Default animation. I believe this was the string. Then we're going to have to pass this information into here. Grab this exact same thing. And then use this value. And then that will allow us at the top level when we're initializing here. When we're initializing the monsters, we can give it a different default, which can be southeast idle, I believe should be correct. The opposite of the characters. Okay, and then we should have the monsters loading in correctly. I mean, technically it doesn't actually matter at this stage because I'm pretty sure that I set all the animations for the mushroom to be the same. Interesting. I think that might be just because I made a bad import. Unlockable characters with the hydration. Appreciate you. Okay. Why did that cause the characters to switch? Just want to validate what's happening. They each should have their own string now. Okay, that's functional. Neat. So we have the characters loaded up. They are facing in the correct direction. As we add more animations like attack animations, we should now be able to trigger those via the combat system. We don't really have any of those at this time, but We could do like a walk cycle to validate that like it's doing something, but not entirely necessary. Okay, particle effects are way off. Interesting. Is that because the particle camera doesn't match the main camera? No, still not quite right. Huh. Okay. So there's like just general problems with the way that we're handling particles. This is actually a big problem. Huh. Eventually, we want to play with having like this camera move around and see what that feels like. But that means that the particles can't necessarily be screen elements, which is the way that they currently work. Oh, I'm not sure now. Regardless, something is really weird with the way that this is anchoring them. Because they're just completely off in space compared to where they should be. How do we decide where a particle should spawn? When I perform this attack action, and that particle is there in space, so that particle is actually spawning on top of the character. It literally is just an issue with the way that we render it. And that's because this particle is a particle object. If we just change it to be on the default layer, we can see it through the main camera here. Maybe we don't need a particle camera anymore is the actual solution. Because the reason we had this was so that we could make particles always render on top. If there's two different cameras, we can choose what renders to which, and we can layer those cameras differently. So the idea with the particle cameras, we always want our particles to layer on top of everything else. But we could probably just resolve that because these are like flat planes by just billboarding the particle. Oh, that might be difficult to do because this is actually a particle sprite sheet. Oh, interesting. Okay, so this might be a larger problem. How we handle particles in 3D space might require a complete overhaul. Where did my tracking sheet go? So we need to reevaluate. So we need refactor particle system for 3D combat. This is programming. Refactor. Combat. I see your question, Amorphous. So I'm not 100% sure is the answer. If the position and the angle of this object is controllable, you can see here that no matter how I move the camera around, the particle is always facing us. So it feels like the particle is already billboarded in some sense. But if we zoom in here and we let this run now, I'm not 100% sure that it's like pixel perfect. Also, that attack didn't even go off. Yeah, it was probably just under the character that was targeted. Okay, yeah, so they got hit. So it might be that we can just use the particle system because it looks like it's already billboarding. But I'm going to have to do some experimentation, and I don't know if it's something that we can realistically complete this evening. That's why I'm making a task for it, just so I keep track of it. The text is at least working fine now. Like, most of that stuff is functional. The other big question mark is when we do abilities that generate elemental essence, or shadow essence, or fire essence. So when this makes a shadow essence, it fills up this meter over here. In fact, the meter's already filled. So if we switch from, oh, Fall is dead. We can't switch. Okay, let's swap back. We need to stay on a black screen until after. Yeah, they're not exactly the same kind of camera setup. Oh, the position of this camera is completely different from the position of the other one. Do they need to match? Oh, that might just be it. Okay. I think we just need to have the particle camera have the same orthographic size and match the rotation and position of the base one. And then they'll be looking at the exact same stuff in the exact same way. That's probably the only issue we have. Okay. Well, sorry, not the only issue, but that's probably like the main issue with like then we wouldn't need to get rid of the particle camera, and then we don't have to worry about overlapping, and the particles will always play on top of everything else. In fact, I'm pretty sure the particle camera is the highest level. I could be wrong. The particle camera might need to be down here, but regardless, I'm trying. The particle should like render over UI and everything else too. Well, that's debatable, but I think that's what I want to start with. So we just need to make something that matches their positions and rotations. Let's go to the front end. And let's write a little script. A little particle script friend. Need to get rid of this thing too, sadly. The pixel perfect camera stuff just isn't working. Oh, this is also complaining because I'm using the wrong one. If I used this one from the render pipeline, though, this one also complains, but it complains about stacking, which is 100% what we want, so I think we just get rid of that. We need a spot for scripts. Where did we write the alignment? Pixel camera alignment? Oh, we slammed this in the player script. That's not great. Other camera scripts? Do we have any other camera scripts? Camera controls. That's Pro Builder. These are all in the dungeon folder. We need to go to the front end folder. Front end. This guy. This is core functionality. This is data-driven components. Screens. So I guess this is going to be core. Camera. Particle. Camera. Updater. Okay, add this to this. And then on update, we're basically just going to go camera.main dot transform should be equal to, well, I guess we can't just do it directly, but we can do transform dot position and rotation is equal to rotation, so they match completely. And then we also want to go into let's just add a component for camera, my camera, or particle camera. It's a better name. Particle camera dot orthographic size is equal to camera dot main dot orthographic size. Cool. Now they should be aligned constantly. Then if we go back to combat, that should be working. It is not. Cool. Cool. Orthographic size isn't updating. Oh, duh. Helps if we actually assign the camera. Okay. If it's not assigned, can't very well update. All right. Shadow bolt. Okay. So the particle effects are way too small. I don't think that's a problem with the particle camera, though. It's just that our particles are too small. Like, that when we transition from 2D to 3D, they just need to be larger to compensate for the changes. Okay. So where do those come from? Main entity, particle pools. We have a bunch of different particles. Do I need to physically go into every one of these and change their size? And their sizes are technically written inside of here. I mean, I can. There's also the whole problem with the production of the shadow essence here. So when we produce the shadow essence, so there's a tiny particle, which is playing. It's very small. It doesn't look like it's pixel perfect. Yeah, there's a bunch of definition there that just is getting lost. So it is just in general too small. It's not like it's tiny and we need to scale it up. It's just not rendering correctly. And if we step one frame at a time here, this is where these the shadow essence effect is supposed to be going off, and this should be coming from the character and flying over to here. So these are actually flying out as little individual particles, but weirdly these aren't aligning to the characters or to the camera. You can see that they're like sideways here. So that's weird. What is this doing? Oh, this is in charge of the whole movement system. Yeah, this is a really old script. Okay. That could be replaced with something newer. Why does this one not billboard? But the others do render billboard. Huh. Interesting. And then, yeah, it's now zooming off into space this way, when in reality it should be zooming down here. So some of this math is also just completely off. Like, what is the destination? How are we calculating that? That's one way. Display position. Yeah, there's a system to go find the display position of the thing. This is some really old code from way back, like from year 1. So what is this even doing? Find position, add observers, on find position. Is like getting the rect transform dot position of the UI element, and then that display position we just pass in. There's no way that functions correctly. Not anymore anyways. Not since we've switched. Okay, so all of this needs to get rewritten. This one's actually super weird. Because technically we want to render, like, we want to render these particles in 3D space, but have them fly over behind this object that's in 2D space. That was always kind of weird, but now that we've switched to 3D, this might just not be impossible, but way harder. We might want to switch this to be a 2D particle that flies off in like UI space and then flies down to here. It was kind of cool because we could utilize like the particle system, which has like this like emission burst, and I was able to choose the shape of circle, which gave us a lot of like free tech as it like shrunk down. Is this literally going to the element over here in 3D space? Is that what's happening? Yeah, it is. Yeah, so this won't work. That's funny. Huh. Okay. I think this is a good point to call it for this evening. I feel myself fading, first off, and second of all, I need to think about some of this stuff for a little bit, which I've been doing on camera, which is just me going, interesting, and like looking at things for 15-20 minutes, which is starting to grade into like, I mean, this isn't the most entertaining content, is not how I feel about it most of the time anyways, but we're starting to go into territory where I feel like we're actually off the cliff. So I'm gonna probably stop here. I'm gonna give some thought about this, and I'll probably be back with more stream tomorrow. We may not be able to solve this in between next stream. Tomorrow we'll probably take a look at Dungeon, though. I think I want to go take a look at setting up some of the monsters, and maybe even start playing with some of the combat tuning in here. Even if the particles don't fly to the right places and don't look right, I think I want to start playing with some of the damage values and having it so we get into a battle, move through the dungeon, get into another battle, and see kind of that attrition level come up. Yeah, okay. And then, yeah, tomorrow we'll, in general, just try and play through the whole thing. We'll start a cutscene, walk through the dungeon. Honestly, we should build some more dungeon. There might be some level design that I should take a break on all this code stuff and just do some level design tomorrow. That's actually probably not a bad idea either. Anyways, that's it. This is gonna be Tolhi signing out. Later, folks.